Rutschebanen at Tivoli Gardens is not only the oldest attraction at this Danish theme park, but it's also one of the oldest roller coasters in the world. Despite being almost 110 years old, this wood coaster manages to offer a better experience than most modern coasters. Find out why this is such an underrated attraction in this review. Rutschebanen opened back in 1914, and it's the second oldest scenic railway coaster still remaining. This coaster was built before the invention of upstop wheels, meaning the train could fly off the track if it went too fast. Rather than having a tame layout devoid of forces, Rutschebanen instead operates with a brakeman or brakewoman on board to keep the experience in check. Now, some parks have modernized their scenic railways and toned them down. Just look at Bakken's Rutschebanen just a short drive away. That one received new trains from Camelback that don't require a brakeman. But that's a major component of what makes Tivoli's Rutschebanen so special. The brakemen give this ride so much character. They seem to love their job, and they pose in the ride's most visible drops. This does result in some variability between rides, as some operators will operate the train faster than others, but that just encourages you to keep on re-riding until you get that optimal ride. This ride is ripe with history. The most interesting tidbit is this ride was targeted by Nazis back during World War II. First, bombs were planted on the ride. Then they cut the electricity to disable the cable lift hill. So when the coaster reopened, riders would have to board the train atop the lift hill after staff members manually cranked the empty train atop the lift. Thankfully, the cable lift has been restored nowadays. This ride also is one of the most iconic looks of any coaster. The ride takes place in and around a snow-capped mountain facade. It's very reminiscent of Disneyland's Matterhorn, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if that ride took inspiration from Tivoli's Crown Jewel. And then the station has that classic train station vibe with the old-fashioned architecture. This is Tivoli's most popular attraction, but it thankfully is one of the park's highest throughputs. The ride regularly runs 3 trains with no stacking. Each train is comprised of 3 cars. The front and back cars have 4 rows each, while the middle car has just 2 rideable rows, because half the car is taken up by the brakeman. The ride is best with 1 person per row, so you can slide side to side, because there's no seat divider, but you can fit up to 3 people per row if you so choose. Even if the switchbacks up to the station are full, the line usually is no more than 15 or so minutes. The loading procedure for this ride is definitely unique. After presenting your tickets or an all-day wristband, you're admitted onto the station platform. Here, you'll find no air gates or row markers. The train then slowly rolls from the unload platform to the load platform, and then it's a friendly free-for-all for any of the available seats. You're allowed to wait on the platform for the next train if the row you want is already occupied, but you need to be semi-aggressive for your row. People will hop into a train before it stops moving, which can make it a little tricky to get the front. Thankfully, I think the best row is the very back. And on this ride, there is a very noticeable difference between the very back row and the other seats in that car. Wait the extra train or two if necessary. Now let's talk about the restraints. You have a thin metal bar for each row. The operators do not lower it themselves. They just visually confirm it's down, and they don't really care how far you lower it. You can have it rest snugly against your lap, or you can basically have it as high as a buzz bar. I recommend the latter if you want the most thrills. One downside with the trains is that the seats are hard wooden benches, so it can be a little uncomfortable after a strong airtime moment, and trust me, there are several of those, when you slam back down to the unpadded seats. Some padding is the one thing I would change with this coaster. Once the track ahead is clear, the brakeman gets the green light and the bell chimes, signaling your dispatch. You then round a slow turn and approach the cable lift hill. This lift is just 39 feet or 12 meters tall, but it's deceptively long because of how shallow it is. Fortunately, the cable lift is super quick and it pulls you to the top in no time. I can't believe a ride this old has a lift system this efficient. At the top, you slowly round a turn and you go around the ride's tallest mountain peak, plus some greenery planted on that artificial mountain. Tivoli really does care about appearances. The first drop cuts through the mountain. This tunnel is pretty scary because it has extremely tight clearances, and if you're in the back, you'll also get a great pop of ejector airtime. Next is an outdoor Camelback. The front flies over this hill. giving them a strong burst of ejector airtime. Meanwhile, those in back get some decent airtime on the descent. You then charge into a turnaround, giving those up front some floater airtime. You have more speed than you expect through the turn, so you get some good laterals. This turn also goes through the mountain, so you pass some illuminated rocks. After going outside for a brief moment, the third drop dives through a tunnel. This one rides similarly to the first drop from the ejector pop for those in back to the cramped tunnel. You then rise into another turnaround. The ascent is outdoors and gives some okay floater airtime for those up front. But you then head back into a cave. You have some solid speed and it turns the opposite way of the prior one, so the resultant turn throws you across the train. You then zip down another nice drop, yet again launching those in back out of their seat. Like clockwork, you then jump up into another enclosed turnaround. Again, those in front get some airtime. Then everyone gets the ride's best laterals. You start by turning left, but you suddenly turn 180 degrees right, which slams you across the train. It's a wild moment that catches most people off guard because you cannot see it coming. When you emerge, you head down the drop behind the station. You have some speed into the drop, and if you're in back, you get the ride's most consistently strong surge of ejector airtime. Next is a little bunny hill that you charge over. The front gets a solid pop of ejector airtime, while those in back get some semi-sustained airtime, towing on the edge of floater and ejector, depending how fast the ride is running. You then rise into another tunnel, oddly getting no airtime. You then slowly navigate a few final turns in complete darkness. You don't really get any laterals here, but expect to hear some screaming from the lack of light. You then reach the unload platform, ending the 2,362 foot or 312 meter long coaster. The restraints oddly unlock before the train comes to a complete stop, and people immediately disembark. You wouldn't see something like that in America, that's for sure. The final thing I want to touch on is this ride's smoothness. You'd expect a ride this old to be rough, but it's amazingly smooth. The only possible discomfort is getting too much airtime and landing hard on the seat, but I think most enthusiasts will bear that cross. So what would I rate Rutschebanen? I would give this old-fashioned wood coaster a 9 out of 10. This ride is just pure fun. I love how much airtime this attraction offers between the zippy drops and the minimalistic restraints. Anytime you can lift me a good foot out of my seat, I am bound to fall in love. The ride also mixes in some cool visuals through the mountain and good laterals on the turns. There are two downsides with this attraction. One, it's very seat dependent. The ride is much milder in the middle rows. Two, the ride can have some variability depending upon the Brakeman. Most tend to run this ride at a good clip, but you can get a slower driver every once in a while. This is easily the best scenic railway coaster I've ridden. The others I've done are much more conservative and basically come to a stop on the turns. But because of how this ride is operated, it is a borderline top 15 wood coaster for me. So those are my thoughts on Rutschebanen at Tivoli Gardens. What are your thoughts on this glorious wooden roller coaster? Do you think the experience rivals modern wood coasters like me? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.